I would like to welcome everyone to this collaborative event. So we would like to highlight yesterday's World Mental Health Day and also raise the awareness about mental health in the workplaces and also beyond the workplaces, focusing on the construction sector today. So very warm welcome to our panelists who will be sharing their knowledge, thoughts and advice with all of us today. So it is a great pleasure to welcome the IOSH President and Vice Chair of the Construction Group, James Quinn. James will join us shortly. So also very warm welcome to our guest speakers. So thank you for joining us today and thank you for participating in this event, supporting this event. So welcome Janine McClymont and then other representative of the construction group. So welcome Malcolm Shields, who is the chair of the group. Vicky Jackson and Angela Apps, who are the construction group committee members. Angela is also the chair of IOSH East Anglia branch. So again, thank you for collaborating with us today. This session will be led by Liz Hancock, the Staffordshire Branch communication coordinator and first aid for mental health instructor. We will also have some participants Q&A session that will be led by Trudy Clements, who is the Staffordshire Branch events coordinator. So before I actually hand over to Liz, just a few points in terms of the Zoom event. So this session is being recorded and will be available on IOSH YouTube channel. Please remain on mute throughout the session, and also please use the chat box for any comments or questions. When you put any questions in the chat box, please put the prefix Q for your question. So thank you very much, and now I hand over to Liz.
Thank you, Bernard. We're going to start off with Janine McClymont with our first question. Janine, could you share your family's experience of mental health and how you use this in your current role in construction?
Yes, certainly. So my experience of mental health issues started with we lost my brother to suicide, age 30, and that was on the 20th of November 2006. So obviously the stigma that surrounded suicide at that time was far greater than it is at the moment. I feel like we've come on a long way since then, but in 2006, people didn't really talk about suicide. I hadn't grown up knowing anyone that committed suicide. And just, I remember distinctly getting a telephone call in the middle of the night to say that my brother had died by suicide. And the day after, I remember taking my child to school to pick my elder daughter up, and just everyone looking at me. There was like such a stigma around it. People didn't know how to approach me or speak to me about it. And I remember feeling so isolated at the time. Yeah, I had to tell the rest of my family that my brother had died, and we come from a large blended family. So I had 2 older stepbrothers. There was another brother under myself, our Stephen, the one that committed suicide, and I had a half brother as well. So just going round and speaking to them and telling them about our Stephen's suicide was something that greatly impacted me. So my dad, I remember speaking to him about our Stephen's suicide, telling him what had happened, and I remember he was just like a wounded animal. He just didn't know where to turn. And a couple of days after our Stephen's suicide, he ended up in hospital with chest pains. I distinctly remember him saying to me at the time, "Don't you dare tell anyone why I'm in here with these chest pains." He didn't want people to know what had happened because of the stigma surrounding it. Yeah, it impacted all of us. My mum found our Stephen, she was the one to find him. So obviously she experienced symptoms like PTSD. Had flashbacks, couldn't sleep, you know, obviously it was so traumatic for her at the time. And I think as well, because what people don't realise is when you lose somebody to a suicide, the ripple effects are felt, you know, throughout the family. That person that's died, our Stephen, he was at peace, but the rest of us, the trauma and the mental health issues were just only beginning, really. Myself, I dealt with it okay at first, and then when it came up to the anniversary of his birthday, I just went to pieces. I remember crying every single day. I had no interest in going out with my friends. I wanted to take my own life. I wanted to be with my brother. Even though I knew that the impact of our Stephen's suicide was so great, I still wanted to be with him. I think for me, the thing that actually changed my perception or dragged me out of the depression was I found a letter of my 6-year-old daughter saying, "Mum, why don't you love me anymore?" And I knew at that point that I needed to get help, so I did. But again, the impact of our Stephen's suicide was so great. His older brother, Tony, he were very close growing up. He actually wouldn't talk about Stephen's death for a long, long time, and he actually turned to alcoholism. He would only talk about our Stephen when he'd had a drink. And we actually lost Tony in 2018 to alcoholism as well. So yeah, it's massively impacted our family. But for me, the way I deal with stuff is I actually read up on things. I reach out to other people, I talk about things. And I found myself on a mental health first aid course in 2018. And initially I was wondering why my boss had put me on that course. I didn't want to do it. But the 2-day course really opened my eyes as to what we could do to assist people that were feeling suicidal. So as a result of that course, I then started to think about how we could how we could address it in our company, how we could help people in the construction part of the company. I initially designed a presentation to be given out on all inductions to our staff and to be trained throughout the company. We took that to board and we had support from board level down, and we're quite fortunate that I work within a company that really championed mental health. So in response to that as well, we did forums for our staff. We asked them what kind of support they'd like. We have got an employee assist program that all new staff members get, so they get access to counselling, family law, money advice. We also partnered with a company called Chasing the Stigma, which work with us very closely to give our staff training around suicide. All our staff have the Hub of Hope app on our mobile phones and tablets. So that is something that the police and the ambulance service use so they can get access help straight away. We also have had a company called Able Futures coming, which is a government-led incentive. So anyone that's actually working that has a national insurance number can get access to mental health support straight away. We meet up every quarter. We have guest speakers within the company. We arrange Zoom calls, Teams meetings to speak to people remotely if they can't get in and see us. We have email addresses that people can send concerns to and ask for a meeting to somebody to go out and see them and offer them support. We have loads of signposting opportunities for our staff. Yeah, so really, you could say that my personal experiences around mental health and suicide have really pushed me to make sure that other people are supported in our workplaces and business.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really inspirational. Really taken back there. And I think you've been very brave to share that. And I think that the work that you're doing within your workplace is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm hoping a lot of the people on this call, will be able to take away and feed into that some more. Thank you. I think we've got Jimmy, the president, on now. Jimmy, are you there?
I am very much, Liz. Hi.
Lovely. So can I ask you, as an advocate for mental health awareness, What do you think the top 3 challenges are that the safety industry is going to face the remainder of this year and from next year from a mental health point of view?
Well, I tell you what, Liz, I would put this into, I need to categorise this in different ways, because, you know, there's the operative, there's a project team, and then there's a senior leadership team. So for me, mental health issues will go along, and I think I'm going to go down the financial route here really to start with. One, there'll be projects. I mean, projects, I think construction projects, and I think if you ask a lot of construction, and I look to my learned friends here, is that construction is in real issues at the moment because of the COVID. Is it still a pandemic? Is it an endemic now? Anyway, the COVID going on, is that planning has become a real issue, and trying to cater for the welfare under the regs, what the regs again, 92 regs I think, and catering for the proper welfare, proper seating, proper changing, all that stuff, including the social distancing. And as planning goes on for projects, the longer the project goes, the more people you need, because you need to do all the fit out and all the other stuff that comes with it. That's creating problems for, I believe, the mental health of and anxiety, if you want to call it anxiety, maybe not mental health, but the anxiety which is included in that for senior leaders, because they're wondering, how are we going to do this? We've got the client doing all this, and we're doing what we can, but we can't get enough people in because of the restrictions that we're working to as well. Then you've got the people that are coming in to do the work, worrying about if they're going to be able to come into that job because there's maybe not enough room for them. And then you've got the project team that are on site really worrying about how they're going to meet their timelines to get things done. So I think there's a big anxiety there in terms of planning and resource as well. That's something that I would say would be a real issue, in my opinion, Liz. Not as Jimmy Quinn, IOSH president, as Jimmy Quinn, health and safety construction guy.
Can you share how you would tackle the differences in the those 3 different areas that you've just talked about, sort of like the exec, trying to tackle how we look after our exec all the way through to our operatives? What would you suggest for our
there'll all be different ones, Liz. I mean, from the operative side, it's about going out and asking that question, not saying, I mean, I've got a real issue with that, asking the question, how are you? For me, I mean, again, Jimmy Quinn, such a negative question. How are you? I'm fine. All right, okay. I always start with a story, yeah, this weekend was a really busy weekend, did this, did that, what did you get up to? And try and engage in different conversations rather than that, how are you? I mean, some people will disagree. They'll say it's a great question to ask to break the ice, but trying to engage in conversation and find out what's going on with people within their lives at the operative level. It's much easier because you can have a bit of banter, you can get on site, you can talk, you can ask them about where they come from and countries, and when you go home or looking forward to doing that. You can ask all those and engage a little bit better. With the project team, it's a little bit different because you've got all different ages. You've got the really senior project lead who's been doing construction for 40 years, and you've got the young graduates coming in now, and everybody's got different ways of engaging in that. And for me, it's just about being able to listen to them, being able to talk, being able to engage outside as a health and safety, to try and talk past what the stuff that's going on in construction, but make them aware that there's another life outside of construction as well, and construction isn't everything what they do, and try and let them feel that our company, well, I'm talking about Multiplex, are doing everything they can as a people company to get lots of stuff done. And then from the senior leaders, well, I mean, I try and engage and have those senior leadership meetings and try and let them know what we're doing in IOSH, for instance, and the resources that are there, and try and be there for them just to talk to, and try and give them some reassurance that you're liaising with the project team are out there, you're backing the project team up, and just being there as something that glues it all and brings it all together as a proper health and safety practitioner would. If that makes any sense to anyone. Lots of cuddles and lots of reassurance and letting people know you're there. And always start from that position of yes, Liz. Always yes. And then work out how to get there. That's what we do.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Are you going to stay around for
I'm
any
here for the duration. You've got me. I'm going to bore you all to bits in the next little while, so no problem.
You've heard it all here on everyone on the audience. Get those questions into Jimmy. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to Malcolm, chairing the IOSH Construction Group. How do you break the stigma around mental health?
Cheers, Liz. Nice hard question there. I think the simple answer is that we change the environment. But there's quite a bit kind of behind that, and maybe I probably just need to put some context on that to begin with, and it's kind of, you know, I'm worked in construction all my life. I'm 60 now. Probably from when I was 16 till I was 40, I was part of the problem. I was part of that culture, if you like, or the macho dominated industry. I told people to sort yourself out. I was part of that problem, part of the issue, part of the things that needed to change. And I thought that people were weak who showed their feelings on a construction site. Thankfully, I got older, I got wiser, I listened, and I think I'm in a better place now to help people and be part of changing that environment that can help people. You know, when I do my inductions or when I do any training with anybody, the one thing I talk about, and when I talk to them about mental health and well-being, as I say, I always remember on the tools as a young lad on a Monday morning, 20 people in a mess cabin, nobody would have felt comfortable enough to say, do you know what it is? I cannot work the day. I can't do it. And, you know, whatever that was, money issues, arguing with the family, the kids in trouble, whatever, because people would have said, and I was one of them who went, sort yourself out, man. I would love, before I get put in my box, but hopefully a long time before that, that everybody felt comfortable enough around that table on a Monday morning to say, I can't work the day, and everybody would just kind of, no problem, sort yourself out, go and have a coffee, go on for a walk, do what you need to do. We'll cover your graft and we'll see you when you're ready, something like that. So yeah, so like that's kind of context to it. So changing that environment, it's almost a generational thing. If I bring that context of me when I was younger, now when I'm older, thankfully the environment is starting to change, and we need to make it not business as usual. What's the right phrase? We need to make it acceptable in the industry for people to be able to talk about it, and somebody else to listen. So we all need to listen. We all need to speak up. We all need to stand up. We all need to support. And I think if we do that with the younger generation coming through, who can also then in turn help to educate the older generation, and let that environment and let the way their mindset and the way that they live and work each day organically grow, and until it just becomes a part of normal nature for everybody to be able to listen to each other and understand and say, right, not a problem, just do what you need to do, and we look after you. That's not an issue. So yeah, so that changing that environment where we make it acceptable, where people will listen and listen properly, is how we'll kind of break down that stigma. We've already started to do that in a way. You know, over the last few years, it's been like great that it's getting that level footing with safety, etc. Long way to go, but we're on that road, and we just need to keep doing that, change that environment. I think, you know, it's really interesting. You know, when we listened to Janine and she talked about that era as well, you know, and I was part of that era, but we've moved on from that. And just to finish, I think, you know, Jimmy's point about how are you? Oh, it is a horrible question. It's everybody says it in the coffee room on a Monday morning, and everybody's conditioned at the minute to go, fine, yeah, it was canny. Whereas if we change that approach, that's part of changing the environment, and they're the little tools that we can use and the little things that we can do to encourage people to make it normal to talk about things like that. So yeah,
Thank
there you go,
you.
Liz.
Jimmy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I knew Malcolm was going to come out with some stormers, and so I was just listening to that one where, you know, coming from my armed forces background as well, to see how much that is absolutely changed in terms of the environment, and you know that's just nailed it. You know, the environment is exactly what needs to happen, and you know a great one was, and down that road Malcolm just said, you know, I walked on the site a couple of weeks ago, and I said to this laddie, he was there, he was just doing his work, and I said, God, what a journey this morning on the train coming in. So that tube is horrendous. And he went, you know what, Jimmy? He said, unbelievable, couldn't believe it. You know, got off one train. I tell you what, I'm really having real issues with getting on this transport in the morning. I think I'm going to have to. Now, if I'd went on and said, all right, Steve, how are you? Fine. Would I got all that back? And again, exactly as Malcolm's just said, it's changing that environment, whether you're military and that roughy tufties, it's still seen construction part where people are just coming on and getting their job done. So yeah, nailed that one, Malcolm. I knew he would.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, isn't it? We do need to change and make it, you know, a lot more, you know, the environment where we can be open and honest with our colleagues. So on to Angela. Could you share with us your experience of mental health, and in particular around how it affects health and safety professionals?
That's better. I couldn't find my mute button for a minute. Yeah, absolutely. I come from a construction and property background, mostly in development, social housing, local authority, that kind of thing. And for the last almost 10 years, I've been running my own business and as a consultant and trainer. So my experiences of mental health, well, my own, you know, it's still difficult to share with people when you've experienced mental health difficulties and sort of bare your soul in a way, but it's a really important thing to be able to do. As Jimmy said, you know, it might be anxiety, depression, or perhaps what used to be termed as a nervous breakdown, when the pressures and demands on you overwhelm you, and then both your body and your mind give in, and you literally need a rest, and your mind and your body need a rest. And as we've heard from Malcolm, you know, there's still the stigma of owning up to how we feel, and perhaps feeling within ourselves that we're weak and we should be able to cope, and how other people might feel about it. We know that occupational stress is not only from the pressures which come from work, but also when your home and your personal life is no longer a safe refuge for you to go home and to relax and to repair. For my own self, a few years back, I've experienced 2 bouts of real stress-related ill health, when my workload in property maintenance for a housing association at the time, and one of the line managers, we're talking about line managers support, well, there wasn't, line manager were causing me some problems, and things were a bit tough, really. And as I've said, my home was not the sanctuary that it should have been just then. In one instance, my dad had been ill in hospital in his final days with cancer, and I was having to be the strong one, supporting my older mum for 4 horrible months of treatment and hospital visits. You know, I got through it, but a few weeks after the funeral, that was when I fell apart. It's almost when the pressure comes off, sometimes you fall apart. The other time I was going through a divorce, and so things weren't easy for some time. And I developed stomach problems the first time, and I fell ill with pneumonia the second time. So the mental thing went physical, as is often the case. As people who know me, you know, I'm a fairly bold personality. I'm quite self-sufficient and in control. And in one instance, you'll laugh at this, well, probably, I mean, I didn't laugh at the time, but unusually for me, I found myself crying in the supermarket when the decision on the range of baked beans, of all things, was giving me a dilemma that I just couldn't handle at the time. So I just abandoned the trolley and ran back crying to the car. You know, it sounds funny, but really it wasn't at the time. And then on several occasions, I was getting ready for work, driving into work quite happy. And then my hand was shaking as I put it on the door handle to the office. There's me telling myself rationally that it was only a desk, it was only a phone, they were only my colleagues, it was only files, it was only work. And I really did know my job back to front, but at my worst, I just couldn't get through that door. So stress and mental health are difficult to acknowledge, to recognise and to handle, both for ourselves and if you manage others too. Then as far as PTSD is concerned, I think it's more of a question for discussion really. In the worst side of our work as health and safety professionals, I really feel that sometimes we see and we deal with trauma, you know, trauma of others. It's our job, particularly when we're investigating accidents and incidents, and sometimes very serious ones, potentially fatalities. We're also supporting others who are perhaps in the worst moments of their working lives. We see the scenes of accidents, we see the injuries, or at least perhaps sometimes images of the injuries, and we're called upon to deal with it and support others through it and to pull the whole thing together. I can remember through my career, I've dealt with some nasty ones, two stick in my mind, both of them were broken backs, totally avoidable, that's the shame of it. And the whole thing sat with me for days and weeks, and I couldn't get the injured parties and the families out of my mind, particularly at night when I should have been asleep. So really the question is, who supports us? Particularly when we're consultants and we work for ourselves and we don't have that company structure around us. But even when we are employed and the structure is there, we're often the people that people come to. You know, they expect us to answer their questions, support them, just get on with it, sort it all out, which we do, that's what we do. But we do need that support and be able to offload. So those are my thoughts really. But finally, as Jimmy said, when we ask, how are you? It can be a really empty question. You know, we expect everybody to say, yeah, fine, thanks, and get on with our day. But we need to listen, we need to answer, we need to make it a conversation. We need to follow up and we need to signpost these people. So when we ask that question, we need to really mean it. So yeah, they're my thoughts.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences. It's quite difficult, isn't it? But you know, hopefully, it'll help other people, you know, feel comfortable sharing their experiences as well. I'd like to put a question in the chat, Trudy. If we're not saying how are you, what are those conversations? So can we put that in the chat and pick that up at the end? See what the panelists say. So Vicky, could you tell us a little bit about how you and your workplace has supported Mates in Mind, which I believe is a charity specifically for mental health in construction?
Yeah, so I started kind of doing some work for Mates in Mind about 5 years ago when they were first established. So they were set up by the Health and Construction Leadership Group and supported from the British Safety Council. And basically they're a charity that aims to improve how we address mental health and well-being, specifically with a focus on construction, but it's actually across all work streams, and kind of looking at how we address the stigma associated with that. And they've actually got a target to reach out to 75% of the construction industry by 2025. So they are really keen to make a difference. Obviously, that's specifically for the UK. I know in the chat, some people have been potentially, oops, what's going on? Some people have potentially been sharing some other ones about from New Zealand and Australia, and it sounds like a really similar kind of charity which aims to do some great things. So going back about 5 years ago, I was still relatively new to the whole construction industry and to the concept of actually how we manage mental health and well-being in the workplace. But I immediately recognised the importance of this and was actually really keen to get involved and recognising my role of actually how I could play my part in changing the mindsets within construction. So I worked for Balfour Beatty at the time, and we signed up to Mates in Mind. So I was really keen to get involved in that. And obviously since then I've done various work with them, and I've seen quite a journey in my limited time within the construction sector, even in terms of our profession and as an industry, in terms of how we react and address mental health. But obviously we've still got a long way to go. I think one of the benefits, if there is a benefit of the pandemic, has actually been mental health and well-being is now being pushed further up the agenda for companies. I think they're starting to realise the benefits actually of managing people's mental health and well-being rather than actually the negative impacts of people being off work, etc. So yeah, some of the ways I've supported Mates in Mind over the last few years is kind of down to more training and actually just talking. So I trained myself as a mental health first aider a few years ago. I was really keen to develop my own knowledge and raise my own awareness on different illnesses and symptoms to look out for, and actually look at how he can actually help support people and provide that guidance as needed. But other elements, we're running, Mates in Mind have a training session for all workers called Start the Conversation. And the aim of it is basically to get workers thinking and talking about mental health, how they can spot the signs and actually how they can start the conversation themselves. So whether it be if they're struggling or they think that someone else is struggling, trying to give them the tools and actually how they do that. And to be fair, these sessions are really, really effective. We start to see the difference on site. We start to see how people were looking out for each other and actually recognising that it was okay not to be okay, and to ask for support if you needed it. And the business was good at providing that support to the relative individuals that actually needed it. And I think, so now I'm in a slightly different role in terms of influence. So instead of being in a principal contractor position, and I'm more of a client, but it's actually really good to see how you can still make such a difference in the industry, and encourage people to take the right action, and to keep talking about mental health. So we encourage all our suppliers to support Mates in Mind, look at the resources, we share their resources internally and externally. Obviously, they don't have to do Mates in Mind, it could be all these other charities, there's some really great ones out there that have some amazing information. But it's not about just getting them to say, yeah, we've signed up for it, it's actually how are we making a difference on the ground. So we look at, as part of our inspections on site, how they're actually communicating mental health to the people that it matters, and actually how we're making it visible, the resources that are available to them. And that's something that's still fairly new, so we've not really seen the impact of that yet, but I think it's a step in the right direction of actually making sure people know that they're supported. And I've done various events with Mates in Mind. So one of the most recent ones, the construction group for IOSH, we led a session where Mates in Mind came in and actually shared some practical tools that people could use in their organisation. So no matter where they were on their journey, it was giving them ideas of what we can do. So we tend to kind of focus a lot on training, and it's actually how can we go further in this? How can we really embed that into our cultures and our strategies as well? And we've tried to do this through having Mates in Mind at some of our conferences and continuous improvement groups as well. Just keep it on people's agendas, keep raising awareness and keep people talking about it. And obviously all action and communication that we take is positive. I don't think talk about Mates in Mind or mental health too much is a bad thing. I think it is something that we should keep high up on the agenda, particularly in industries like construction, where we have seen some really shocking figures in terms of suicide rates and how many people take their own lives compared to the average population. Yeah, and I think there's some really good steps we can take next as an industry as well, in actually terms of, and I know someone put it in the comments before, actually how we get that management buy-in. I think if we don't have that top level support, we're going to struggle on the bottom level. So actually, how can we get it as part of strategies and businesses? We've got really great tools now, things like 45003, the new ISO standard, and there's a Mates in Mind assessment tool, which actually shows you where the gaps might be. You can benchmark yourself against it. So yeah, I think there's some really great tools on how we can actually start to really embed this within our own organisations as well.
That's brilliant.
That's
There's a lot of information there. I might have to update our slide deck that we're sending out with all the resources. I'm really interested in that 45003 gap audit. That looks like it could be quite useful for some people. Malcolm, before we go to Q&A, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Yeah, I just wanted to say, just to like really bring some sharp, very recent context onto this, and you know, I'm working on a major, large infrastructure project on highways, and within the last 3 months, we've got a section of the A1 with lots of bridges, overpasses, etc. We've had 4 attempted suicides, 4 jumpers. 3 of them, thankfully, we got the authorities there in time and sorted. One of them was talked down by one of our foremen. So it's happening, people. It's here. We've got to deal with it, and you know, and listening to Janine earlier and Angela a lot, and it like just really brings it sharp into focus, doesn't it, Liz? So yeah, just to be, I know you're going to move on, but I just wanted to raise that point. It's here. We're having to deal with it.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. So can we move over to Trudy for questions?
Yes, sure. Sorry, I was on mute then, the typical thing that we do. Okay, so we've got a few questions that were in the chat box. We've got one from Ewan McRobbie. What has been the biggest challenge for implementing a mental health strategy into the workplace?
I guess anyone can go ahead with that, but it sounds like a
I
good
don't
one.
mind. I don't mind taking a shot at that one, Liz.
Okay, go on.
I think we touched on it earlier on. I don't know if it was Angela or if it was, I think it was Vicky actually. For me, it'd be senior leadership. They're just getting their sort of really starting to get their heads around it now. And when I say senior leadership, I mean senior. I mean, we were running mental health first aider courses in my company for a good few years. One of my colleagues was just really rattling on and getting it all done and creating a really great team and everything. But it wasn't, I wouldn't say there was resistance, but there was no one really senior had done the course. And okay, we had the strategy and we were cracking on with the strategy, but I wouldn't say we were pushing against a closed door, but we certainly weren't pushing against an open door. And then Claire managed to get the whole executive board on the mental health first aider course, and then things just changed overnight. You couldn't make it up, and also from that side as well was in the buy-in to that strategy from the person on the ground is trying to, I don't know if sell's the right word, to sell that. So for instance, yesterday was obviously the mental health day yesterday, and this week we're doing a series of conversations this week. The doors are open, we've got people there. We've got a young chap coming in from one of our subcontractors who struggled with mental health in terms of anorexia, and he wants to tell his story. And he's going to be doing that as well. Something you don't hear, really brave. But when we took that, if we'd taken that a couple of years ago, I think, on the construction site, and now I tell you what, we can't take any more bookings. He wants to come back and do another 2 or 3 sessions. Do we honestly think that we would have had men queuing up to listen to this chap? I don't know. But that, again, is trying to keep that momentum going. That mental health is a real issue. And as Angela touched on earlier on, comes in so many different shapes and sizes. That's the big part as well, which is, I think, trying to get that into a strategy is a real issue as well. So a couple of ones there from me. Thanks, Liz, and great question.
I think we've got both Angela and Jean both chomping at the bit to say their piece. I think, Ange, you just picked it to the post with your hand up first, so we'll go with you and then we'll move on to Janine.
Okay, I've got control of the mute button that time. I got it right. I think, you know, in terms of senior leadership teams and directors and boards and that sort of stuff, a lot of them are still on that pull yourself together kind of thing, but they also see it as a bit of a pull on resources and don't see the value for money in putting money into, resources into good mental health practices and having trained mental health first aiders, or the other well-being things that we all hear about. But it's sort of a hidden cost, but an absolute real cost. Because as I said with me, you know, it went physical. It wasn't just that mental tiredness, that mental I can't cope. It went to pneumonia with me. It went to stomach problems with me. And I did have time off. And it's funny, when I went to the doctor, you know, I didn't want him to put stress on my sick note. I wanted him to put anxiety because it sounded a little bit nicer when it got to the bosses. But that cost is hidden. It's a real cost because the physical side, and it starts with the odd duvet day, people have the day off, and then it does turn into real illness if that pressure doesn't come off and it's not addressed. So I think it's getting the senior leadership team and the bosses to see that, and to see that there is actually value for money in investing in mental health and policies and mental health first aiders and all the wellbeing stuff.
Absolutely. For my 2 penneth, every time I present anything to the exec, I tie it into return on investment. It's always a motivator, isn't it? Cost. Yeah. Janine?
It takes a little while. It doesn't happen overnight. Obviously, mental health training is expensive. It's something that's not legislation, so a lot of people aren't keen to jump on it because you don't really see the benefit. I think we were quite quick in implementing stuff. I mean, we've got 28 mental health first aiders across the business, across construction, across all different parts of our business. We had big campaigns where we had air fresheners with mental health first aid contact numbers on. We pushed it on inductions. We trained all senior managers up. We literally rammed it down the throats. We used to use a video by a bloke called Kevin Hines, where he talks about jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And, you know, we took that to board, we played that video to him, and we just hit hard and hit home. And everyone that comes into the business gets a mental health first aid presentation. I speak about my experiences, and I've found that just by doing that, many people just open up and say, do you know what, I've suffered with that. I've been off with this, or I've had this experience, and that helps us then support that person in the business. And we're quite open with stuff. We have conversations. You know, we will ask somebody, are you feeling suicidal? We will signpost them. We've got occupational health involved. You just have to keep pushing. It doesn't happen straight away. But I think the thing is, once you get the buy-in from the top, it very quickly follows thereafter.
Thank you. Vicky?
Yeah, it kind of ties in with what Angela was saying in terms of obviously making them realise the benefits of actually implementing these strategies. Like there's a big cost saving with actually being proactive, and I think it's trying to have that data to show that. I know that's sometimes an issue, is actually we don't actually have the quality data to be able to reflect actually what the true cost saving would be. And I suppose I'm quite lucky in the organisation I work for that they are quite proactive, they are keen to just do it anyway. I do think mental health first aid and aid training has helped make some of them aware of the scale of the problem and why we actually need to do something. But in terms of implementing it as well, I think we've had success in terms of senior managers actually making themselves appear vulnerable. And I think that's actually quite hard for a lot of people to do. And I suppose that's kind of what people have done today, sharing their own stories. So it's encouraging them to do that. And actually we found that people then lead by example. We've had really open sessions and they make such a difference. We've shown that it's okay to kind of talk about it.
Yeah, we've done something similar, got some of our execs to talk about their personal experiences around grief, you know, work-related issues, etc. I shared my experience on postnatal depression and stuff like that. So again, I do think that definitely works. Trudy, what's our next question?
Yeah, we've got the next question from David Searle, which is there data on what trade has been most adversely affected by mental health issues? Thank you, David.
I'm going to answer on behalf of everyone and say I don't know, in all honesty. What I can do though is before we send the slides out, go and see if there is any data, and obviously if there is, you know, put a link on it on the resources. Sorry, not got any more information on it than that, sorry.
Okay, next is your question, Liz. If we are not asking how are you, what can we ask to start people talking?
Go on, Malcolm. You've got your hand up, or was that from the previous question?
Just quickly from the previous question, it's a fantastic question, and can I just say that I'll try and do something with the IOSH Construction Group on that and see if there is any data out there, and if there isn't, what can we do about it? David, yeah, sorry, Liz, carry on.
So, Angela, over to you.
Yeah, I think the how are you thing is, if somebody's feeling a bit vulnerable and you say, how are you? They're probably going to deflect that. And as Malcolm said, you know, it's just something everybody says all the while, and it's not particularly important. But I think, as he said as well, you know, if somebody says, how's your weekend, or, you know, what you're doing tonight, or just engaging somebody in conversation, which is a little less personal, and then you can sort of worm your way around it if you're any good at talking to anybody. The thing is, not everybody's very skilled at talking, and I know they say girls talk better than men do. I mean, maybe it's a thing on construction sites that, you know, men don't actually talk so much, But I'm guessing if you really got a good discussion on football, or if you really got a good discussion on what you did at the weekend, it's a way into a conversation. It's a way into somebody's sort of personal side, isn't it? Because it's what they're doing away from work. And if you can get into that, I think probably you're starting to get onto a winner.
Yeah, brilliant. I totally and utterly agree. For my two penneth as a first aid for mental health instructor, I would say that I would start a conversation if I noticed changes within an individual, and I would, tackle it pretty much direct. And somebody who was like quite lively, became quite inward, I would actually say, I've noticed a change in your behaviours. Is there anything you want to talk to me about? Is there anything I can help you with? That's personally how I would tackle it, quite direct, but it would be very directional, based on like my knowledge and my experience of that individual. Trudy, we've got any more questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple more here. We've got one from Mavis Nye, that these last 2 years are the worst times we have lived through, with more to come, and so many people are finding it hard. Could we not challenge the media to be more kinder and tell the truth when reporting COVID, etc.? They are a huge part of this problem, or at least they are not helping. So whether that's a question or a comment.
I think that's one for Jimmy. Are we as IOSH, are we in a place where we can influence that kind of thing, Jimmy?
Yeah, I was too busy. Well, can you just repeat that question again? Because I tell you what I was doing. I saw something on the internet, and it was from. And I'm not making an excuse here because I love Mavis to bits. But if we go back to that question, but the thing was, there was definitely something came up on my LinkedIn a while ago, and I was just checking it out. Liz, just give me 2 seconds, because it was by Mates in Mind, and it was a great paper on mental health. And it was done at the Tideway London project. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put the link into the chat. Is that okay? I'll do that now. And again,
I'll take it from there and put it on the slide deck we're sharing. We've got a
okay,
resource
and
slide.
if we could just go back to what was the question again? Sorry, Janine.
No, it's Trudy.
Oh, sorry, Trudy.
It's okay, Jimmy. These last 2 years are the worst times we've lived through, with more to come, and so many people are finding it hard. Could we not challenge the media to be more kinder and tell the truth when reporting COVID, etc.? They are a huge part of the problem, or at least they are not helping.
Yeah, well, I mean, can I answer that? I wouldn't answer that as IOSH president. Can I answer that as Jimmy Quinn, who's got a wife, and they have conflicting discussions in the Quinn household about the media reporting of COVID, and there's many different parts of that. I think Mavis is definitely right. There's nobody more social media savvy than Mrs. Nye, but the media isn't, I believe, helping as much as it could. There is a lot of misreporting out there. We know there is a lot of good reporting. There's all sorts. Doesn't matter where you look. You can look here, there, and everywhere. I'll look at one report on the TV and it says to me one thing, and then Karen will go away and look at something else and it says another thing. There's not a line. There's not everybody going down the same line. Everybody's sort of trying to outdo each other. That's a real issue for me. From an IOSH perspective, IOSH will try their best to look at the research and develop all these papers that we're doing. They'll collaborate with the WHO, they'll collaborate with the ILO. We talk to our senior stakeholders, we provide the resources as honestly as we can, and we put those resources on the website. But just a quick one, I'm doing a Boris Johnson here. I'm just going to detract a bit to something that Angela said earlier on, and I forgot all about it. And it's my focus group. I set up a focus group this year, chaired by the wonderful Keith Hall, and the as well as amazing, I nearly said more amazing, Joe Price. And the reason why we set that mental health focus group up was exactly for what Angela Rabbs just said about that consultant, that one person band that's out there going out, doing all this stuff and coming home, and we don't know what they're coming home to. They could be living on their own. They might not have an extended family. Who's looking after them? So I've charged Council and Keith Hall and Joe Price and the team to come up with some recommendations for me to ensure that we're doing that. And I forgot to say that earlier on, Liz, but back to Mavis's question, we could be a lot better in thinking and going forward. And I think Mavis is right that there is definitely an issue with the media, whether they're reporting the right things or whether they're misreporting. But we can see that every week when we watch the television on a Saturday or Sunday.
Thank you.
We've got a question just coming from Martin Johnson. If management are the root cause of mental health, where can staff turn to for help?
The mental health first aiders or their health and safety manager or friends or you know, I mean, what is management? I mean, for me, management's a big, massive thing, isn't it? And if I can't believe that there wouldn't be somebody that would be able to listen and talk, because I think Janine said earlier on, they've got, I think, did you say 26 or 36, Janine, health and safety?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in Multiplex, we've got 120. You know, it's not, I'm not saying, you know, you've got Timbuktu and I'm Timbuktu 3. Or if you've got a pink elephant, I've got a cage to put it in. But you know, there's plenty of people there to talk to. So management are not listening. Someone will be listening. That's awful if that happened.
I personally would say, obviously, yeah, your mental health first aiders, if you do have them. If not, obviously, you've got if it's a line manager issue, I would say that HR would be your first port of call. I know that sometimes people will say that there's a conflict with HR, etc. But obviously, you should have HR procedures in place for, you know, having those discussions. You know, your first point of call would probably be a mediation session to see where you are. And there are things that your line manager should be doing as well to support you. So, there's, you know, reasonable adjustments is something that needs to be considered as well. So that's just my 2 pennies.
We've got Janine and Angela with their hands up. Liz.
Okay, either one. Go with Janine.
All right. I was just thinking that it's, you know, obviously management, there's a training issue there if management aren't recognising like mental health in the workplace. We've had it in our own organisation where people that have been with the business for a long, long time, you know, they think, oh God, not mental health again. But the same people, when they have an issue or they have a mental health issue, then they're the first ones to be putting their hands up saying this is fantastic, we should get on board. So for me, it takes a while, but it's about educating people. It's about, you know, that empathy, about understanding that not every problem's a small problem to someone. You know, it can be a massive thing to another individual. I just think like there's massive training needs, and I think that's why we managed to get on top of it quite quick as a business, is because we did train from the top down. So our board members have the same training as our operatives.
Angela, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. It's strange because as a consultant, and I don't know whether other consultants in the audience, but we deal with a lot of SMEs as well as the larger organisations, and I always say this, but you know, the big organisations, the big boys, if you like, they've got HR departments, they've got trained, I don't know how many Jimmy said in Multiplex, you know, all of those mental health first aiders. But when you get down to sort of one guy leading 10 people in the SMEs in construction, you don't have that facility to let them turn to, or even to sort of to positively say go and turn to someone, because those people aren't there. And I found it going into there when we sort of talk about, I don't know, I could be doing a DSE assessment on somebody in the office and find out that some of their aches and pains are actually due to tension, due to stress, due to anxiety, but they don't have these people to turn to. So again, you know, when we do these things, we always raise more questions than answers, don't we? But I think we must be pretty mindful that you know not everybody has got those facilities to turn to.
Thanks, Angela. I think we've got time for just one more.
I was just going to add to the back of that, Liz, before we have got one more question, because I had a question that, do any organisations monitor the use of the mental first aiders? You know, how many people go to them, you know, and the time spent talking and advising people?
We do. We get them to fill in a Google form, but it's anonymous, so we don't get them to put in the person's details. It's literally just, you know, the time that's spent, and whether it was work related, not work related, and whether, you know, what the outcomes were, etc. That's what I do personally.
I just say that we signpost them, and we signpost, we get in touch with our coordinator, and our coordinator then signposts them to our permanently contracted consultant that comes out of Glasgow. So yeah, we signpost, and then we then send the email to that.
Okay, so the last question from Mark Johnson is work from home hybrid working causing further mental health issues for workers? Will we see an increase in the need for further support networks to help workers who still feel vulnerable about returning to office or not returning to the office? Okay, Jimmy, you've got your hand up.
I think Dr. Jim had his hand up first. I don't
Yeah.
want to
Oh, sorry, Dr. Jim, off you go. You're on mute.
No, I'm off now. It wasn't exactly this topic, but we've alluded to HR and stuff like that. So my background before health and safety was HR, and there's interest in the companies I speak to, some of which are construction, but a lot of which also are not, is that whole piece about not seeing team members and colleagues, and not having an arm put around you, and having that water cooler chat, as they talk about in America, is quite a big thing. So there is loneliness out there too. And interestingly, HR departments I've spoken to in one particular industry, in terms of moving back into the office, one particular company I can think of have had the figures 40% of all their office staff who they've asked to come back hybrid working in September. 40% have come back with medical reasons why they should not come back. And the other thing I wanted to add about it has been touched on about they didn't use exactly this terminology, but you have to expose the soft underbelly of humanity. And that's more easily done one-to-one, and more easily done by someone that the individual trusts. But as a species, not only at work, but also in our private lives, we're really naughty, because I'll say to you, how are you today? You say, great. And actually inside, I might be crying because I'm not feeling great. And we do exactly the same at work, but we do the same thing in our private lives too. How are you? Brilliant. Well, and you just have to keep talking about it. And someone somewhere has got to go first. And that's probably the manager or someone senior in a one-to-one situation, and just say, I'm not having a great day either. And the other interesting thing is, of course, is that we talk about senior management. They'll be having all these problems too, but they don't want to talk about it.
Dr. Jim, that's brilliant. I'm really looking forward to you coming and talking at one of our events, and we'll be in touch direct very soon. Jimmy, do you want to last word?
I think I'm quite happy to let you wash up, Liz, and get to your summary. I don't mind answering that question if you want to make it as a narrative to go through, but if you've got time, I'll answer it, but I think we might go well over time.
Yeah, I think we've got to hand back over to Bernard. Can I just say a massive thank you to everybody. I think it's been a brilliant session tonight, and thank you to all the panelists and their open and honest discussions. I do personally feel we could probably go on all night with loads of questions and loads of discussions. So please feel free to, pop something in the chat if you want to, to do a follow-up session sort of later in the year or anything like that. And I'll hand over to Bernard to sign us off.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, everyone. Like I said, I probably repeat what Liz said, but I must admit, thank you very much. It has been a very powerful session, very inspirational as well. So a lot has been said, and I'm sure we can take something away from this conversation. Actually, we can take a lot. So take it with you and just make a positive impact in the workplaces, and also, as it has been said, beyond the workplaces. So great, thank you very much. Thank you to the guest speakers. So thank you, Jimmy, for joining us. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Vicky, Janine, and Malcolm. Appreciate your support and appreciate you being here, sharing the personal experience, giving us some suggestions and advice. Really powerful again, and thank you for your collaboration. Taking from that, thank you to IOSH Construction Group for collaboration and influencing IOSH Staffordshire Branch members and IOSH members and non-IOSH members. So this is the aim. We want to make some positive impact. We want to influence others. So together we're stronger. Thank you for the session leaders. Yeah, sorry, Jimmy.
Sorry, one IOSH, Bernard. Thank you,
yeah,
mate.
Exactly, yes. So thank you, Liz. Thank you, Trudy, for leading the session as well. As I said, thank you to Construction Group. Thank you to Staffordshire Branch as well. We've got some committee members working during the events, and obviously we've got some members working in the background, helping us organizing the session. So it's pretty much everybody is involved, again, to help our members for safer and healthier world of work. So we would like to invite you to our next event that will be on the 19th of October, 9:30 in the morning. It will be about winter wellness. So we'll talk about some guidance, how to stay safe during the winter months. We will issue some more communication in terms of this event. So we wish you all the best, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Hi, Liz, Bernard, can we just have 5 minutes?